So I just want to tell you the story of my little red Stingray. It all started when my buddy Dan said, there's a 76 Corvette that's been sitting in a chicken coop for about 15 years that they want to get rid of. And they kind of kept the gas going and stuff like that, started it up every now and then. And so I ended up buying that thing, and I'm going to just tell you a little bit about my journey to make it what it is. So by the time I laid my eyes on it, Dan had got it over to his little garage, and there it was, 76 Corvette, faded paint. I walked around it, tires are a little flat, gray leather seats, just a little stock Corvette. The years had taken its toll where the bumper cover had, rotted off in the back. It spent a number of years, I found out, in Texas, and now it's up in Minnesota. But I looked it over and decided to take a chance on it. We got her started up and got the brakes pumped up enough for me to make my way about a mile or so down to my place and made the deal. So I could tell by looking it over, it had been painted poorly. I found out about 4 times, pretty faded out. So I knew I had a lot of cosmetic work to do on it. But it seemed like the motor was going to be sound, so rolled it off to my place. So I get it over to my little garage, and I'm feeling pretty stoked about it. I love those stock wheels, but I knew I wanted to kind of make my little race car. And so I ended up finding some American racing wheels used with some tires on there used, and ended up swapping those out. And decided to start sanding down and see how far I could go sanding down through that old paint. And then finally realized that it's maybe going to be better as some of the paint started chipping off. I started scraping it with a razor blade and thought I had come up with quite the revelation, and then later on heard that there's a lot of people doing that, and I got right down to the original silver paint that was there. So what sometimes felt like it was going to just take me a day or so ended up taking, I imagine, maybe 4 days, not full time, but finally got it down to the silver, and that felt pretty good. And then started laying on the primer. I ended up putting about 2 gallons of primer surfacer all together, and then a lot of hand sanding and block sanding, and you really end up massaging these things over and over and over by the time you get them about ready for the paint. So then it came to the paint. I wanted to paint it red, my little red race car. And I knew that the red paint in automotive paint these days would be pretty expensive, and when I went to the auto store, they confirmed that, it was more that I wanted to spend on my little budget. So I decided to do what I had done on some other projects, and that's to use spray cans. Nowadays they say rattle cans or spray bombs. So what I've used before is Rust-Oleum gloss protective enamel. And I went to the paint store and bought, I think, 10 cans to start with of the red and like 3 or so of the white. And that's what I decided to do. So we grabbed some masking paper and some masking tape and started masking away for the big spray job. So at this point, I knew I wanted to make this into my little race car. So I decided a nice white racing stripe down the middle would look good over that wonderful cherry red. And so I masked off for that so that I could paint the white strip later on. So, of course, a lot of masking and draping to do all the door jambs and under the hood and all that. Once that was ready, I closed the doors, and you kind of take a deep breath and realize you're in it to do it, and there's no stopping now. You've got to keep a wet edge going and hopefully enough coverage. It's that fine point between keeping it shiny but not letting the paint run. The system that they've got for the Rust-Oleum paint is a wonderful spray system that gives you different fan widths, and that worked out really, really well. So once I put the last coat of paint on, you stand back, and I thought to myself, boy, this went really good. You know, a few flaws here and there that I expected, but it really went so well. And I just hope if the gloss holds up on it, this is gonna be a success. And it really held up well. As the paint dried, of course, then you're just chomping on the bit to unwrap the gift and start pulling off all the masking. And so we started pulling off masking tape once the paint had gotten pretty close to dry, and revealed the new beautiful little red Stingray. But it wasn't quite done yet until I remasked what I had to do after a couple of days to do the white stripe down the middle. And then again, wait for that to dry, and then peel off the rest of it to reveal the new look. Well, that's the story of my little red Stingray. It was a great project. I am really happy the way it turned out. Like working on any restoration like this, there's times when you're kicking yourself in the butt wondering why you got into it. But for the most part, it, especially at the end, was pretty rewarding to come to this point. So I'm really happy the way it all turned out.